Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. I'm going to plunge right in, although I have to say it's a wrench to have to stop cuddling my girls. It always is. However, this is the next best thing, isn't it, Aurora, baby girl? Marcia Sagador says, and this is a very good observation, which I agree with wholeheartedly, hence why I am reading it out. And if it applies, I leave it up to you to think to whom it would apply. A pathological liar and professional scammer never changes, nor wants to, even if offered help. That's absolutely true. A case in point is a notorious woman called Sante Kimes. She was a sociopath. She loved scamming, even when she was married to a multimillionaire and was going to the White House with him. She couldn't resist the lure of the grift. So she was busy scamming people, even though she didn't need the money, and even though it was going to destroy her life. And ultimately, not only did it destroy her life, but it destroyed the life of her son as well. Because after she'd worked her way into complete criminality, she got him to help her to kill someone in New York. They were tenants in this woman's house and killed the woman. And if I'm not mistaken, she's dead now. She and the son were imprisoned for life, and he repudiated her during the trial, if I remember correctly. Sante Kimes. Google her if you've never heard of her. Sante, accent on the X, on the E, Kimes, Kimes. She is the most pronounced case of somebody who cannot resist the lure of the grift, because you see, it's the excitement. It's, I'm going to get one over on you, you schlamp. Look how clever I am. I don't need to do this. I'm doing this because I want to. You know, destructiveness, evil, call it whatever you will, is very satisfying to evil and destructive people. And some of them don't have the capacity for goodness. They do have the capacity for pretending to be good, but they don't have the capacity to really lead good and constructive lives. So, Marcia Sagador, thank you so much for that extremely, extremely desirable comment. And as I said, the Sante Kimeses of this world, in less gross and grotesque and extreme fashions, exist in everybody's life. Sociopathy accounts for, if I'm not mistaken, 5% of the general population. So out of every 100 people you meet, 5 of them are going to be sociopaths. Now, just because you're a sociopath doesn't mean you're going to be a murderess or a murderer. But it does mean you're going to go through life predatorily gobbling up all the goodness and everybody. And whether you actually kill or just kill figuratively, It's called being a predator. Effectively a killer of the good. M.M. Blue says, Lady C, if Harry and Meghan sue South Park, how will they prove Meghan is not an empty vessel? Well, of course, I'm sure you've heard that they are not suing South Park. Well, they never had a hope in hell if they had sued South Park. They can't sue South Park because A, South Park hasn't identified them. B, it's fair comment. C, it's true. And D, they never mentioned their names, did they? And Harry and Meghan are public figures. And the bar for defamation is very high. What else would they be suing them for? Breach of their privacy? Breach of their copyright when they didn't write it? Well, of course, Meghan is involved with everything, so maybe she beamed the thoughts to the South Park writers, and they transcribed them. Shades of amid scabies. The farcicality of it all. But you see, by announcing that they're going to sue, then announcing they're not going to sue, what do? They manage to get column inches. They're very successful at getting column inches. They're very successful at getting attention. They are very successful at entertaining us with their grotesque, bizarre, and wildly inconsistent toing and froing, coming and going, nonsense piled upon nonsense. How would Harry prove that Meghan is not an empty vessel? If they did sue? Well, I don't think he would be able to prove that, because I think South Park's point was a very valid one. Meghan is an empty vessel, and one comes to that conclusion not of her race, but of her conduct. Humility is good, says Lady C. Don't you find it preposterous that Meghan would say that she feels excluded from King Charles's coronation? What did she expect? Humility is good. Surely you can't be arrogant enough to ask such a ridiculously obvious question. I mean, with due respect, how could it be preposterous that Megsie baby would be anything but hurt at having been excluded from King Charles's coronation? I mean, we're talking about Meghan, you know? I mean, she's classy. She's got style. She believes in change. She could teach him a thing or two about coronation. I mean, she looked the word up in the dictionary. That means that she knows it all. Well, I think your question is really a very appropriate one, if I may say. Harry and Meghan go to the greatest lengths to keep themselves the centre of attention. And who are we to deprive them of their just deserts when they're so entertaining and make themselves so ridiculous and provide us with so much amusement and fun? Harry has stated through the Daily Telegraph, which is one of the few newspapers in this country that he will ever even go near. And I know one or two people at the Telegraph. I have a great deal of respect for Camilla Tominey, who, of course, he was vitriolic about in his book. But doesn't matter when he wants to plant the nearest flower bed is going to be the Telegraph. And so he's managed to get through to them, to tell them that he needs to be there for pretty much the most important day of his father's life, and hopes to salvage his strained relationship with the family. Of course, they're going to trust him. As Mary Magdalene and the Virgin Mary said, let's text Judas Iscariot and see if maybe we can trust him to do another good deed. I mean, you couldn't make any of this up. Meghan feels excluded. And therefore, she's weighing up the possibilities of possibly not attending, because there are 1,000,001 reasons why it might not be in her interest or his interest to come, and that they are in limbo, and considering the 1,000,000 different variables impacting upon their decision. Well, all of that tells me that they are going to keep the mystery bubbling over. They're very good at creating mysteries, haven't you noticed that? And they're going to keep this one on the boil between now and the coronation, because they need to keep themselves relevant. They need to somehow keep themselves in the news. Whatever is going on, they need to be there. Unbelievable. The shamelessness of it all, the quite frankly puerility of it all. But it's clever. Let's not deny that it is clever, because it is clever. I wish personally that neither of them would come, but I suppose if one of them must come, it should be him. And he on his own should be quite manageable. With her, no, because she is the propeller of the whole thing. She is the motivator. She is the power behind all 16 thrones that they sit upon regularly as they reign supreme. PK2YZQ says, Lady C, I saw David Boies on Piers Morgan last night. He was saying that Prince Andrew won't try to unpick this settlement. Otherwise, he's in danger of being charged with a criminal offence. What's your take on that? Well, I had to look at David Boies' interview with Piers Morgan to be able to answer this question. And I did look at it. For once, Piers wasn't fulminating. He was allowing David Boies to speak. He was the essence of calm, the essence of a seductive interviewer instead of Piers the fulminator, which he often is. But then that's the way of getting the blood a boil, and getting controversy and drama. He didn't need to do that in this case. Now, a friend of mine has acted for and against, with and against David Boies. And he has given me a lot of insight into David Boies' personality and how he functions. David Boies made some very interesting points, all of which were suggestive to me that David Boies was here on a mission. First of all, he was here because he was in the studio, so he was in England. And if he was in England, that suggests the possibility that he came to England particularly to give Prince Andrew a message. Well, I have to tell you, my information is that the message David Boies is conveying to Prince Andrew is rarely in the interest of Bill Clinton and to maintain the status quo with Virginia Giuffre. Because I was told that, and I actually believe it makes sense, that the whole Prince Andrew thing was a massive protectionist exercise for the Clintons. Because Virginia Giuffre had initially had Bill Clinton in her sights, as well as Prince Andrew and Alan Dershowitz. Well, we know the way that Alan Dershowitz has gone. And one of the things that David Boies was saying was that it wouldn't suit Prince Andrew to unpick the agreement, because in his pursuit of satisfaction against Virginia Giuffre, he could be charged with criminal offences. And David Boies actually articulated the view that he was relatively surprised that he actually hadn't been charged with any criminal offences. Well, I would like to ask David Boies what criminal offence he could have been committing when, contrary to Virginia Giuffre's assertions done through David Boies, she was, by her own admission, on the game from the age of 13 or 14. She didn't meet Jeffrey Epstein until she was 17. She was over the age of consent in this country. Her father drove her to the airport. Her father is the one, according to her earlier statements, who drove her to the airport. And she voluntarily flew to this country with a passport signed off by her parents. So how is that trafficking? And if it's trafficking, why aren't her parents, or at least her father, being put in the frame for collusion with trafficking? That's a question that needs to be asked. So where is the criminal offence? There's no criminal offence here. In New York, she was over the age of consent as well. By her own account, she got $15,000 for claiming, she says she got $15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein for informing him that she had been to bed with Prince Andrew. Nobody saw her go to bed with Prince Andrew. Where did she go to bed with Prince Andrew? It wasn't at Gillan Maxwell's house. It certainly wasn't at his house. Where was it? That's something she's been silent on so far. And this nonsense about that photograph, whether it is fabricated or not, everybody in the public eye constantly poses for photographs with people they have just met or even collided with. Because, I mean, I'm constantly being photographed with people I've just barely met, and once or twice have actually collided with them in the street. And then they ask for a selfie. So the photograph in itself means nothing. But David Boies is trying to spook Prince Andrew, because if the Prince Andrew case collapses the way the Alan Dershowitz case collapsed, it might not be very much in the interests of Bill Clinton. So that's what's going on behind the scenes, if you must know. Patricia Gallagher says, Lady C, I have had 11 children, and no way I could stoop down in the latter part of pregnancy. If I had tried, I would never have been able to get up without a few strong arms to help me. Well, Patricia Gallagher, you're not Meghan Markle. You're not unique. You're not Superwoman. 11 children, and you still can't get down on your haunches with your knees tightly together in 4-inch heels when you're 8 months pregnant. And you can't go pop when you bounce up back. Gratis yoga, Yogi Bear, or some other bizarre nonsense. Point taken, my dear. Point taken. Yes. Point taken. You are not the first woman who has borne children who has said that Meghan's feats were impossible. But of course, we have seen them on camera taking place. So they have happened, haven't they? And why would we not believe what our eyes tell us? Of course we must believe it, because it's there. The photographs are there. The videotapes are there. It's all there for us to see. Meghan was pregnant, and Meghan displayed unique qualities. She's so special. I'm filled with admiration for her. I don't know why you aren't, Patricia Gallagher, because by your own admission, you couldn't even manage it with one. And she's not only managed it with two, one would assume, because of course we never saw anything except her lying flat on her back with Archie on her bump and the concave impression that his head made on that bump. Remember that? In the Netflix? Meghan is unique. She really is unique. And we can't disbelieve anything she says or does, because she is a paragon of simplicity, sincerity, truthfulness, goodness, altruism, charity, and all the other Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, and Shinto virtues. And I'm sure I've missed out a religion or two, but she encompasses all the virtues of all the religions. I think she's on her way to being made a goddess. I think you get my point. Sharon Lobo says, Lady C, I wonder what your thoughts are on the similarities between H and Princess Margaret. They appear to display the same self-destructiveness, sadness, and insecurity from their station in life, second born. Also, if the Queen Mother had issues with Diana, she would have blown her lid on Harry. Oh, well, she certainly would have. Oh, without a doubt, she would have. And I'm not sure to what extent there are similarities between Princess Margaret and Harry. Princess Margaret was always loyal to her sister. She would never tolerate anybody showing the merest hint of disrespectfulness towards the Queen. She was a staunch respecter of the monarchy. Yes, she drank, she dabbled in drugs occasionally, but not to the extent that Harry has done. She was at times very adventurous in her personal life. Harry hasn't been that adventurous in his personal life. He's been desperate to find a mate, and he's found one. She wasn't insecure in her station. She was extremely royal and extremely pleased to be royal, and made sure that everybody knew it at all times. She liked being down to earth, but if you ever veered into the slightest hint of familiarity, she would be quick as a flash. She'd do a variation of what Meghan did. Slap him once, slap him twice, slap him again. Except she did it figuratively. I don't think there are many similarities. But there are similarities. They were both self-destructive in some respects. They were both idle in some respects. But Princess Margaret's idleness was forced upon her. She would have loved to have continued being a counsellor of state. She would have loved to not be demoted the way she was into really doing very peripheral royal engagements, while Harry has actively sought to free himself of his royal responsibility. How many other similarities are there? She was entertaining. He's not anymore. And she was not paranoid. He is paranoid. She knew her position and she respected it and expected everyone to respect it. But she was not delusional. She might have been sometimes exploitative about her position, but she was never destructive the way Harry has been, and she was never cavalier the way he has been. She basically was not a traitor to her kind, which Harry in my opinion, has been. So I hope that answers the question. As for the Queen Mother having issues with Diana, yes, well, so did Princess Margaret. Princess Margaret refused to speak to Diana. And the Queen and Prince Philip weren't exactly thrilled after Diana did the Martin Bashir interview either. Diana burnt her bridges with disloyalty. Princess Margaret never was disloyal. Harry has burnt his bridges with and through disloyalty. Aurum 2991 says, Dear Lady C, I truly enjoy your program. Thank you. I wonder if you could please share why the York girls continue to appear to support H&M, despite all of the proven lies and destruction upon the royal family which they are a part of. They also continue to be part of the royal family by participating in official royal events, which seems at odds to me. Do they support King Charles and William, or are they only attending royal events for their own personal benefit? Well, that's pretty wide-ranging, and I'm going to focus it somewhat. You know, you can love someone and don't necessarily approve of everything they've done. Also, had Harry gone about departing with the decency that he could have exercised, that would have been something that would have suited both York girls, because all of the minor royals are now in very anomalous positions, because unless they are working members of the royal family, they are rarely being released into society to do their own thing, but to do it in such a way that they do not let the family and the institution down. Also, they have been marginalized. Their mother was marginalized. Their father is now marginalized. So they are, to an extent, genuine victims of the fallout from their parents' divorce, then from their mother's, quite frankly, bizarre behavior. I mean, she may have a heart of gold, but she rarely has. Nothing else is golden. Nothing else. Everything else is brassy. She's brassy like her hair. And she does have a good heart, but she has been a consistent embarrassment. And of course, that means that the girls have grown up with, first of all, an embarrassing mother, now an embarrassing father. So they are, to an extent, genuine victims. Harry is not a genuine victim. Harry might have been a victim of a tragedy, and he was certainly the victim of being overindulged, and he was certainly been the victim of not very great intelligence and very poor judgment, and he's certainly been the victim of, as I said in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, over-limerence, or as the Queen put it, he's a bit too much in love. But he's not really been so much a victim of circumstances, except where his mother was concerned, as a victim of himself, while the York girls have not been victims of themselves, but misery loves company. Victims like other victims. They have something to identify with. That creates a bond. Also, William and Harry were very close to Beatrice and Eugenie from they were little boys. Their mothers, when they were speaking, were the greatest of friends. And they were first cousins and brought up almost together. 2 boys, 2 girls. So they have been close. And, you know, when you are from a grand family and you are not to the forefront, it can be a little bit jarring if you don't remember how lucky you are, that you're much luckier than most other people in the world. If you start on the self-pity and poor me, I'm being left behind, blah, blah, blah. And I think there's that element going on as well. So I hope that explains it. Linda Colbeck says, hello, Lady C. What do you think about the rumour that H&M have been invited to the Met Gala? Well, it might be true, it might not be true. Anna Wintour has proven herself over the years to have scant regard for decorum or good taste when she could push herself and her causes, whatever they are, to the forefront. She is the ultimate publicity seeker, the ultimate publicity arranger, the ultimate publicist, not only of herself, but of her causes, chief of which has been the magazine, part of which now is to do with the Met Gala. I mean, anybody who has Kim Kardashian there, I'm sorry, as an honoured guest, well, I suppose fame is the name of the game, and it doesn't matter if you are infamous or famous, as long as, because remember, in America especially, but even here, people have started to use the word notorious interchangeably with famous. Notoriety is the opposite of fame. Notoriety is infamy. But the mere fact that we live in a world where people seem to think that the words are interchangeable will suggest, at least to me, that they think that the attitudes and the meanings are also interchangeable. Maybe they are. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I could well be old-fashioned. I could be out of step. But I still believe in the distinction between fame and infamy and decorum and indecorousness. And I'm sorry, I do not think there is anything admirable about a public figure whose career was launched with a tape of a very personal nature, set up by her mother, and then the man who cooperated with them is trashed unfairly by them to make out that they were his victims when he is their victim. And they then go on to have a very successful television show for many, many years. So that means they're doing something right. And that means that they have a degree of capacity, which one needs to acknowledge. But I'm sorry, there is nothing that Kim Kardashian could do that would make me think that a woman who has used that down there to further herself the way she has done, not only at the start of her career, but in various nude pictures, which She may think they're tasteful. I think they are tasteless to the absolute nth degree. And that's somebody that Anna Wintour thinks is so admirable and desirable that she has her as an honoured guest at the Met Gala. Thanks, but no thanks. So maybe she will have Harry and Meghan. It certainly would create a big stir. And she also, I understand from people who know her well, is sufficiently arrogant that she would think that the British royals would just have to suck it up and get on with it, because in a year or two she would be asking William and Catherine, and she thinks they would be saying yes. Let's wait and see, because I suspect that Anna Wintour, if that is indeed what she feels, and I am told that is very much her attitude, let's see her proven wrong. We need to exercise some patience, but I don't think we're going to have to wait more than a few years. MM9684 says, Dear Lady C, do you think the late Queen was aware that Harry is unstable? He does appear to be very unwell, but I could very well be wrong. Best wishes from Wales. Good question. Yes, the Queen knew that Harry was unstable. That's why she was as forgiving and as flexible and as accommodating and as firm as she was. Make no mistake about it. Harry would like to deceive himself and the world into believing that the Queen was a pathetic and downtrodden bystander at Sandringham. She wasn't. Everybody was executing her desires as well as their own. The Lord Lion, when he said they had to be either in or out, but they couldn't be both, was acting upon her specific instructions. If Harry believes differently, Harry is a bigger dolt than I thought he was, and more self-delusional than even his worst critics could believe he is. Yes, she knew that he was unstable. Everybody's known for years that Harry was unstable. I've known for years that Harry was unstable. One simply didn't expect it to become so flagrantly obvious and to be paraded in front of the world as if instability is now a virtue. User EN5RK2EL3J says, gosh, I wish these things would have names instead of all these symbols. Good evening, Lady C. Good evening. On her P. Dina YouTube broadcast 2 days ago about William being upset with Harry, feeling that trust has been betrayed, Patricia brought up a very interesting question concerning the guest list for the coronation. We have now learned that Harry is demanding that Doria Ragland be invited. I have not heard anything about Carol and Michael Middleton being invited, but Patricia seemed to think that Catherine's parents and siblings have been invited, and she wondered, would that not mean that if Doria were invited, shouldn't Thomas Markle and Meghan's siblings be invited as well? We know that the palace was very concerned that Doria was the only family member on Meghan's side invited to the wedding, but they said Harry and Meghan had complete control over the guest list and their concerns were rebuffed. However, the guest list for the coronation is under the control of the King and Queen Consort, and the guest list, being considerably slimmer than for the late Queen's coronation, is per the King's wishes. It therefore would seem natural that it would not be re-expanded to include children's in-laws. But if one's son's in-laws are invited, it would seem very out of character for the king to then exclude the other son's in-laws. Can you shed any light on this? Thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge you so generously share with us, and hugs and kisses to the fur babies. Thank you very much. I will give Aurora, who is right here beside me, a little stroke. She's stirring into life. Well, I'm going to tell you what the old rule was. Everybody was asked. Fifth cousins were asked. World leaders were asked. Everybody was asked. Even the Duke of Edinburgh's siblings were asked to the coronation. They weren't asked to the wedding, but they were asked to the coronation. There is not necessarily going to be parity. The Middletons, if they are asked, are already part of the royal setup, and they are the future Queen's parents and siblings, and they behave impeccably. Catherine is not on the outs with the royal family. Catherine has never accused the royal family of untoward beliefs or behaviors. The same cannot be said of either Meghan or her mother. Remember, her mother said on Netflix that, and the mother used the word racism, that racism was behind the trouble, shall we put it, with Meghan, which was utter rubbish. Meghan's conduct was the motivating factor. So, Doria has herself attacked the British people and, by extension, Harry's family. So right there is all the reasons in the world why Doria shouldn't be asked. And why would Doria be asked? Meghan doesn't live in this country. Doria doesn't live in this country. Meghan is not a working royal. Meghan is a hustling royal, but not a working royal. Why would her mother be asked? And if her mother were asked, yes, there would be parity in terms of balance to ask her father and her siblings. Well, that would be rather awkward, wouldn't it, if they were asked as well, because they have never been received so far. I'm not saying they shouldn't be asked, by the way. I am, as I think most people know, a great sympathizer of the Markle family. I think they have been introduced in the most disgusting and reprehensible manner by Meghan and Harry, and initially by the British press at Meghan's behest and upon Meghan's dime. That's right, upon Meghan's dime. If Doria Raglan were asked, it would show a degree of lack of dignity on behalf of the king that would be truly regrettable. There is no way that Doria Raglan's presence would be acceptable to many people in this country. Not after the way she and her daughter, with her encouragement, have behaved. Because Doria has encouraged Meghan in all the racist nonsense that she has been so damagingly spouting, not only in terms of the royal family and the British people, but to the detriment of the Commonwealth as well, which has a substantial majority of people of colour. So the damage has been great. We only need to go back to William and Catherine's unfortunate tour of the West Indies and to see what happened in Jamaica. And remember, I'm Jamaican and I know chapter and verse on what happened in Jamaica, how it happened and why it happened. And I also know what many of the high commissioners and people in positions of power all over the West Indies, and indeed some in Africa as well, feel about what Meghan has done, with the active connivance and encouragement of her mother. Let us see if King Charles would be misguided enough to ask that woman. Let us see. Because I have to tell you, at that point, I know he would lose my respect. Because really, there does come a point when you do not treat with traitors and expect those who support you to continue to do so. So I hope that clarifies my position, because I think Meghan and her mother and Harry have betrayed the interests of the British royal family, the institution of the monarchy, the British people, and the citizens of the Commonwealth by their false accusations with regard to racism, when the only problem was Meghan's conduct, not the colour of her skin. So on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please remember, this cannot be done without you, and therefore, please keep the questions and comments coming in. Okay? Thank you. God bless, and if you have enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and see you next time. Bye-bye.